My name is Bernadette Rowley.
Danielle Johnsensky.
So we are teachers at Pittsfield Elementary School. So to give you a little more background, I am currently a multi-age teacher. I have a classroom of first and second graders. Last year I was also a multi-age teacher of first and second graders. I have about 18 students on my own. The year before that I taught first grade, and a few years before that I taught third grade in Pittsfield. The one shift from last year to this year is that I now co-teach with a special ed teacher and another classroom teacher, and as of tomorrow we will have 38 students that we share between the three of us.
This is my first year as a Title I math intervention teacher. Last year I was a parent in Bernadette's room and learned a lot that way. Brand new at this.
So as far as our school, right now we have 336 students. We're pre-K through 6th grade. The population in Pittsfield, it's very rural if you're not familiar with Pittsfield, about 20-25 minutes outside of Concord. As of last year, we are school-wide for Title I. We last year did the multi-age classrooms as a result of participating in the NG2 grant, which I can tell you more about later if you'd like to know some more about that. But some of the components were competency-based education, personalizing instruction, blended learning, project-based learning, so there were some different facets that went together with that. And as a result, we did the multi-age teaching in 2 pilot classrooms. Our whole district now, as of last year, is competency-based at the elementary and middle high school. As far as one-to-one devices, for quite a few years, 5th grade and up has had one-to-one, but last year was the first year, especially with the grant, that we were able to have a lot of classes below 5th grade become one-to-one and really take advantage of implementing some blended learning practices. Okay. So what we'd like you to do is think a little bit, and you might have to move to chat with somebody if you need to. Think a little bit about an online program or tool that you're currently using in your district or your school classroom. Consider one thing about that tool that you feel is really impactful with your students, and one reason why you like to use it. So we have a little Jeopardy timer. What? Oh yeah, if you want to talk as a
large group,
whatever you'd like to do. Since there are so few people, we could always just share things. When the music goes off, we'll come back together. So before we move on, would anyone like to share what they just talked to their neighbor about? Something that they feel is very impactful or effective about one of the programs they use?
We use a program for math, Dreambox, and we use Lexia for reading, and our school is all multi-age. So we have K1, 2, 3, and 4, 5. So when you take both grade levels in, it's really nice to be able to utilize a program where they can go as far as they can, or slow as they want to, or some parents will have them, we put them, have them go on at home, just one day in addition to regular math, or in addition to regular reading, so they can maybe take it to another level.
Which school are you at?
Chilmark, Martha City.
Oh. So then a lot of this will look kind of familiar. Anyone else wanting to share?
Some of the tools that we use in our classrooms, like voice recording tools. They students like journals, audio journals. And
We do sometimes, but most of what we're talking about today is specific programs and how we use them a little bit differently. But there are occasions where we do use voice recorders. All right, so when we're thinking about blended learning, it's important to point out that you're not just thinking about having a bunch of devices or gadgets in your classroom to say that you're very tech savvy or text rich. It's really how you're using the tools and the resources that you have. So as opposed to just having a bunch of different technology, it's really the way that you use it. So thinking about blended learning, there's the 4 pieces to it. So you always have the teacher instruction, so there's face-to-face time with the student and the teacher. There's web-based assessments, so they're getting feedback. The teachers are collecting data from that. You also have students getting some of that instruction also online or through their tech, and then also students are doing traditional printed materials, paper, pencil practice, as well as other types of activity practice, not on technology. But it all works together, so you could be doing all 4 of these components for one competency or skill. So some of the online programs we use, one of them is Dreambox. So the bullet points kind of pinpoint the different parts of the program and why we use it. It is fully implemented at our school K through 5, so all of our K through 5 teachers are using it. So here's just a quick video to show you a little bit more about it.
What do students think about when they use Dreambox Learning Math? They think about where they're headed, what they should learn, and when they could use some practice. They think about who they are and the personal progress they're making. They think about how numbers work and why math makes sense. When they have to make a decision or even have as many as 100 options to choose from, they think critically and have their own ideas. They think it's worth celebrating their progress and how nice it is that they're not doing the same thing at the same time on the same day as everyone else in their class. They realize math gives them tools to show what they are really thinking. They know there are many ways to solve a problem and believe they are the heroes who can figure out great ways to tame monstrous math problems. They think about numbers in ways that can't be done with a pencil and paper as they interact with digital tools and games to understand the beauty of mathematics. They think mental division is easy and that adding negative fractions and decimals can be fun, not hard. They think about important math concepts, uncovering ideas to understand more deeply. As they figure things out on their own, they don't think they have to wait for someone else to show them what or how to think. Most importantly, when students are welcomed into Dreambox Learning, they think for themselves. Because when they think about it, math just makes sense.
Make 10.
Oh goodness, hang on.
Let's play.
No, let's not right now. Okay. So as far as Dreambox, one of the most important things, and we'll kind of go into it a little more in a bit, but one of the most important things is that it's adaptive to learners. So it's meeting what they need, so it's specific to the skills that they need practice with. And it's also, you have the ability as the teacher to assign lessons and look at the holes that students have based on the data and help coordinate their learning on the online program with the learning that they're doing in the classroom. One other online program that we use, which I have to say is out of the 3 we're going to talk about, the least effective as far as data for a teacher and really being able to be adaptive to a student. So extra math is just the fact fluency, the practice that we use, but it's very important in the way that we use it, because we use it as a goal setting point for students, so they're able to really think about their own scores and how they work online. We check their scores weekly. We can see their score every day to check their progress. It also is a great tool for homeschool communication as well. Another program that we use is Lexia, Core 5 Reading. It is also, it's a pre-K through 5 program. We are using it right now, K through 5 as well. There are some 6th grade students who need some of those skills that are still addressed in Lexia that are using the program as well as more of an intervention. So we'll watch that quick video. So you have another picture of it.
Lexia Reading Core 5 is an adaptive, technology-based literacy program for students of all abilities in grades pre-K through 5. Core 5 targets instruction in 6 areas of reading: phonological awareness, phonics, structural analysis, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. Starting with pre-kindergarten skills, students begin building phonological awareness and phonics knowledge as they develop vocabulary and oral language comprehension to ensure they have the word attack and oral language skills necessary to make the critical shift from learning to read to reading to learn. Core 5 provides a personalized learning path through these skills by adapting each and every activity based on student performance. Demonstrating proficiency with a skill at the standard step allows the student to move on to offline extension activities to develop automaticity and expressive skills. However, if students struggle, the task is scaffolded to provide guided practice, allowing students to better focus on the task at hand. If students continue to make errors, Core 5 provides direct, embedded instruction to prevent repeated mistakes and reduce frustration. Core 5's embedded assessment system, Assessment Without Testing, collects student data from the program with every click of the mouse, providing ongoing progress monitoring for all students without a test event. This actionable data can be viewed via mylexia.com, the educator website, through simple-to-interpret reports at the student, class, grade, school, and district levels. This data derives the recommended program use for each student and provides educators with the resources to connect student data to classroom instruction. For an in-depth look at Core 5 and its features, click on the videos below or contact your rep for a free demonstration.
So similar to the Dreambox, it's adaptive to students. You'll never have 2 students in the same place at the same time. And the scaffolded piece to it is hugely important, especially when they get to that part where they're flagged and you get the intervention lesson that any adult in the school is able to give to the student because they're actually scripted. You just print them off. It comes with all the materials, like letter cards that you might need for a particular student's lesson. All right, so, oh goodness. Now what we'd like you to do again for a quick share is share one thing about these programs that you think intrigues you or you feel might fit well into your school curriculum, or for those of you that are already using it.
How well it works.
Yep. Or if it's just something you'd like to learn more about the programs, whatever it may be, you can share with a friend now. So would anyone like to share the one thing that they talked about with a partner?
What I said is that we've done a lot of different ones through the years, tried all kinds of different ones. And the thing that our school likes about both Lexia and Dreambox is they're not game-based. And there are a lot of math programs where you do 10 problems and then you get to play a game. And then you do 10 problems and you get to play a game. But unfortunately, if you miss all 10, you still get to play a game. So kids got to once they realized that, they would just push any answer for 10 and then spend time playing the game. So they, there was no desire, they weren't working really hard to get the math done, they were just working to get to the games. And neither of these, they're gamey looking, but they're not, there's no game involved in scoring that I know of.
Right, so the Dreambox does have a game component with the arcade, but you can
we have
turn on and off the hours. So we only allow our students, and each teacher can do it differently depending on their schedule. But we turn it off so they can only use it after school hours or on the weekends. So, because we did find we actually had it on in the afternoons at the beginning of this year, and we thought they could use it during academic choice, and it's an option if they want it. But then we found that was all they were doing, so we actually shut that down. So moving on, we're going to start to talk a little bit more about the actual data that you get from the programs and how we use it. So we're reviewing the data for both Dreambox, Lexia, well, all three, and Extra Math all the time. It can be once a day, every couple of days, but at least 2 or 3 times a week we're looking at the data. So we review it for a bunch of different reasons. It may be because the student's not making the progress you thought they were making, so pulling in the progress monitoring. With the Dreambox, you can assign those lessons, so every 2 or 3 days I go in to see if students have completed the lessons, or students get to the point where they're like, I don't have any blue lessons from you, can you give me a new one? Or they'll come up to me right after they finish and just say, can you give me a new lesson right now? So that clues me in that I need to go in and check everybody's. We also use the data to create some flexible groupings, especially with math. It has helped us with determining our SLO population area of needs. This year we're targeting math, so looking at some of those holes that exist in their Dreambox data as part of where we're plugging in needs for those kids. And then we also have done a lot with independent goal setting and using both of the, well, all 3 programs again as part of those goal setting tools. So this is just an example of some of the Lexia data. Each student, for the different areas that they're working on, they get a chart for their progress in that area. So it shows you how many attempts they have, and you can tell, so if you go in and a student has a completely flat line, every time they're attempting that, they're not making progress. So you can actually go and pull a lesson, even if they're not flagged. So they may be really struggling through it, but not needing the scaffolding enough to get flagged. But if you see that straight line, you can go in, pull a lesson for that activity they're doing, or that skill, and then do that lesson with them before they get flagged to push them on and make their bar go up, keep their progress moving.
Is there a screen where you can see the whole class, like graphs?
Not this graph.
Aggregate.
There is a screen where you can see, it's mostly just everyone's level that they're on.
Is there an aggregate?
And their progress through that.
Yeah.
It shows their projected growth, whether they would meet their yearly target. But for the most part, to see this drilled down data, you have to look at a particular student. When students are flagged for those intervention lessons, it does show you those in a separate screen. And the skill builders, once they pass a level and move on to their next part of the world that they travel through, it will give you the skill builder printout for them. But with the Lexia program, there are a ton of resources other than those that are flagged for particular students. As far as data for new flexible groupings, kind of looking at the data and finding those commonalities, so you can group students to give them specific skills. So if you find there are quite a few students who are struggling with a particular group of sight words on Lexia, you can pull those kids in during our academic choice time. We can give them some extra intervention with it. Sentence sequencing, we do an ELA support block in the morning. That's a chance to work on some of those. And the fact practice. Right now, Danielle's helping with an intervention group of students that really needs, some 2nd grade students that really need work still on their 1st grade fact practice. And then we also had the previous group that was working with Danielle, who still needed one-to-one correspondence for counting and extending the counting sequence. So not only were they working on it with extra practice on that, they were getting the extra intervention support from her. So for our flexible groupings for math, we do have a pretty involved process for how we use the data and how we set up our groups and move our groups, move students through the groups. We pre-assess all students on the competency before we start the unit, and then we form our groups based on those pre-assessment results. So I had said we have about 38 students shared between 3 teachers. We also have a paraprofessional who works in our classroom, so we're able to use him as a resource to help make our numbers smaller in the groups. And Danielle also takes a group for math. So typically there are about 8 to 10 students in the large group, and then we form 2 subgroups off of those larger groups. And then we do that all based on so the subgroups are formed and the larger groups are formed all based on your pre-assessment data. So I might have 8 to 10 students in my group, and then I look at their specific data and see how I can group them in a way that makes sense based on their data. And then for half of their time when they're working with a teacher, for math they're with the teacher directly, and the other half of the time they're on their iPad doing extra math and then Dreambox. And if they are mastering skills faster than the rest of your group, you might talk to another group teacher to say, hey, this student doesn't belong in my group. So we'd look at their data and move them to a spot where they belong. And then we reassess at the end of the unit, and if we still have students who are not meeting competency or not showing the progress we've expected them to, we would continue working with them, assigning the lessons they need on Dreambox or giving them other interventions to meet that competency. So our SLO population, right now our SLO population is specifically targeting math. We did our SLO goal based on the students that did not meet their projected math growth on the MAP testing last year. So we specifically are making sure that when we're assigning the Dreambox lessons, we're giving them lessons that are hitting those holes that they have in their math progress. So those weaknesses that they have, we're assigning them typically one lesson that goes along with a weakness and then one lesson that matches what we're doing in class. And then they're also getting extra paper practice or small group or one-on-one work with a teacher during our academic choice time. And then really paying attention to that progress of those students by monitoring the data. So for math, we kind of already touched on that a little bit, but our typical instruction period for math, we have one 50-minute block. So for your group that you're working with, 25 minutes of their time is spent on the iPad doing extra math, and then Dreambox extra math typically takes anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how focused the student is and how fast they're moving through the program. And then the rest of the time they're on Dreambox. So on Dreambox they have the assigned lessons that the teacher has sent them, and they also get other lessons for standards and competencies they're working on. And then the rest of the time they're working in their small flexible group with a teacher. We also have the 15 minutes of academic choice time, which is that time for extra intervention for students. We also have students who are asking still, can I have another math practice paper? Can I do work on Dreambox? Can I do extra math again? So students are very excited to continue math during that academic choice. For ELA, we have a couple blocks that are specific to ELA during the day. We have one first thing in the morning after morning meeting, we have our ELA support time, and that's when our interventionists help with students. So we have our 1-2 class and our multi-age 3-4 class actually mix students all together. So we have about 6 or 7 teachers that are able to pull kids into small groups. And that is an opportunity when they could be using Lexia. Not every group is doing Lexia during that time, but it is an option. And that is really targeted on what that student needs to keep moving in their reading level. And then we also have a block that is also skill-based for another 15 minutes a little bit later in the day. And that time, sometimes they're using Lexia again, but it's not always. It depends a lot on what our competency instruction is. And then we also have a foundations block in the afternoon for 35 minutes. Again, sometimes students are able to access Lexia during that, depending on how the groups rotate for foundations. And they can also choose to do Lexia during our academic choice time. So as far as assigning the lessons, I've touched, I think, a little bit on this. We assign the lessons for a few different reasons. Really trying to pinpoint those weaknesses and target the skills the students need, mirroring the practice that they're doing face-to-face with a teacher, for extra practice on that. And really just looking at those standards that students have not completed, so which holes they still have, or the ones that they haven't even, sometimes they'll pick and choose the areas that they go on in Dreambox, and if there's something that's a little hard for them, they tend to try to avoid it. So trying to force them to give them those as their assignments also helps get
Can you
them.
assign lessons by group?
I don't know, I always do it individually. I think there might be a way to, but I've just always done it
I don't assign anything.
as one student. I can help you, I'm happy to show you how to do it. It's really easy. I was just doing it before we came in here. For progress monitoring, I think that's one of the pieces too, like, because we're constantly looking at that data, making sure that students are making progress. We look at who's exceeding our expectations, because if they're exceeding expectations on Dreambox or on Lexia, then we should be seeing that same progress happening in the classroom during face-to-face instruction. And also, the opposite is true. If we see a student who is, we had a girl who all of a sudden was doing multi-digit addition and subtraction, but we had her doing addition facts through 20, and it was like, well, wait a minute, she's working this hard and actually using her whiteboard and trying to figure all of this out. So if she's able to do it on Dreambox, why are we having her do this in the classroom? So really looking at making sure progress is matching. And we also have to look at comparing time spent on the program versus their actual progress on the program. Because with Lexia especially, it's easy for a student to be on the program for a long time, but not make progress. It's possible for a student to be working on the same skill for 80 minutes and have a flat bar. 80 might be an exaggeration, but so that's why it's really important to be looking at that data, because they can work for a long time but not make progress. So that's where you need to either have someone sit with that student as they're doing the program to say, do they not know how to use it? Are they just not using their time efficiently? Or is it that they're really struggling with this skill and really need that one-on-one intervention? And then the skill builders also are a good chance to keep having that student plugging away at skills that they have mastered to maintain that mastery. So as far as the intervention perspective, we're able to give Danielle data from the programs, from what we're doing in class, and she's able to take that and kind of use that with her students. So the one she's working on right now, or the students she's working with right now, are all students in our SLO target population. So we've kind of used the data that we have from Dreambox, we've used the data we have from paper pencil assessments to really give her an idea of a starting point with those students. And
it pulls those kids, a small group, out into a different area where they can really focus on what they're doing. And what I've seen is some of the students who are always the last to come up with the answer in class and get frustrated and they just don't feel real confident. You pull them into that small group where everybody in that area is on the same level as them. All of a sudden you're getting a new kid who's coming up with the answer first. And that confidence is just growing immensely for the kids in that small group, being able to pull them out like that.
Yeah, and the same is true when you do something just one-on-one during that academic choice time with a student too, if they're really struggling. Sometimes the assertiveness of first and second graders, especially in asking for help, doesn't always exist. They just rather sit there and get upset about it, or just kind of shut down and ignore the program. So pulling them and really giving them that support that they need to grow their confidence is really important. The other piece too is this is where the programs are really helpful in building that homeschool connection. So at conferences a couple weeks ago, we were giving parents the printout from their extra math data and saying, on this chart you can see which facts they've mastered, which ones they haven't mastered yet, which ones they haven't even attempted. So that way we were able to communicate which ones they can practice at home to really help pushing them forward on that program in school when they use it. All right. So now what we're going to do for our discussion is to think about the last time you set a goal with a student. Maybe it was a goal with your own child at home, or even a personal goal for yourself. And with your neighbor, share what the goal was, what steps you took to reach it, and who might have helped you with that goal along the way. So a few different things for that one. So do we have any brave people that would like to share personal goals or student goals?
That would be a brave one to share.
All right. Well, so since nobody wants to share, we had you think about goals because one of the most effective things that we're doing with the programs is actually working on goal setting with the students and thinking about their own progress on the programs and their data. So we do a lot of independent goal setting. The first ones that we've started with so far this year, we're just using extra math goals. So this is something I did with my class last year, and we had some really great success with it. We started with extra math goals, so really just focusing on the fact fluency. So they'd look at what their score was for that week, they'd set a goal for the following week, and then the next, at the end of that week when they looked at their score again, they would reflect on whether they met their goal, and if they met their goal, what was something that was really helpful to them, or if they did not meet their goal, what was something they needed to do differently or better the next week to help them meet their goal. It's important to point out too, I don't think I said this, but with our multi-age classrooms, we do use flexible seating, so the students have the option to move around. So a lot of times you'll get comments that are about focus or their seating choice that they chose. So sometimes they'll say, I need to be in a spot where I'm facing the wall, or I need to sit away from such and such friend, or away from other people so I don't talk. So really it's also thinking about their work habits as well as their just math ability or practice. With Dreambox, we have a board where we post weekly lists of top 10. So last year we just did the top 3. This year we're gonna, because we have a larger class, we're doing top 10. So it would be the most minutes on the program, the most lessons completed, the most progression within standards, because that's how Dreambox measures it. We actually took little pictures of the kids going, yay, or whatever their victory pose was, so we could put those up for the 10 students that are the top 10. And with the most minutes, that also helps you encourage them using Dreambox outside of school if they have online capabilities. And then we post pictures of their Lexia Level Up certificates to show who's leveling up that week. And with the goal setting, one of the most important things I've noticed is the student conference that you have with them when they're doing that goal setting. So really talking about their reflection, saying, well, if sitting next to so-and-so wasn't a good choice for you, what might be a better choice? And having them really think about that. So then throughout the week, as they're using their extra math, using their Dreambox, you're saying, oh, I can see that you're sitting against the wall at this desk, so you did a great job helping yourself focus. So, and it also, we did some reading goals, talking about their levels, and being able to say, I can see that as you're reading that story, you're doing a great job summarizing it in your writing, because that's what's going to help push you forward. So really using it in your language with students and reminding them also what they're doing to meet their goal. So thinking about our data from last year, we started Dreambox in the beginning of October. By the end of the year, my class of 18 completed 4,572 lessons, so that was about 254 lessons per student, so that's more than 1 lesson per day. On the Dreambox program, I actually had 3 students that, one was a first grader, 2 were second graders, who actually moved on to the 3rd grade level of the program, and 2 first graders were working on all 2nd grade standards. And that first grader actually at the end of the year moved up to 3rd grade. So that was pretty exciting to see that growth. For extra math, we had 5 of our 5 students pass the addition and move on to subtraction. 2 of them were able to master both addition and subtraction facts through 20 and move on to multiplication. And we had over 2/3 of the class go up at least 30 percentage points just since we started the goal setting, not since the beginning of the year, but since we started that goal setting process at the beginning of January, and then 12 went up at least 40 points, 10, 50 points or more. Our average score increase was actually 70 points. And on Lexia, we were one of the 3 classrooms that was piloting Lexia. We started the pilot program the beginning of April. So my data through the end of the year, so for only about 3 months, my class went from 61% below grade level, 33% within grade level and 6% above grade level. We ended the year with 22% below grade level, 50% within grade level, and 28% above grade level. So for just a few months, less than a few months on the program, that was really exciting to see such big growth. But one of the things that was, for me, really exciting was our SLO growth for my class by the end of the year. Our goal was to have 40% of students who did not meet their projected growth on the MAP test the previous year, and this was ELA last year, meet or exceed their projected growth. So in my class, 75%, my class was called the Olympians, 75% of the students met the SLO goal, but the especially exciting part was that for my IEP students, 5 of those identified students improved to being at or within 4 points of the grade level benchmark. So they made huge growth. I had 2 go up over 30 points on their reading, and 6 out of 7 of my identified students met their projected growth. And we also post things on Class Dojo, like this little picture here when they meet goals, so they get to share that with their families. Other things that we do to celebrate student success, these are the level up certificates that they get from Lexia. So we post those, everybody does a cheer for their friends, we put them up. Other teachers in the school, like Kathy, and the first grade team are doing a lot with celebrating student success by posting bulletin boards. Dreambox also has little certificates when they collect different icons and coins.
When they finish them up.
Yeah, so we can print those out. For our kids, we only print out the Lexia because there's too many of them. The other thing we did with Dreambox last year, 2 times a year Dreambox does a nationwide Dreambox challenge.
Mm-hmm.
We attempted to do the nationwide challenge. My class and the 2nd grade class that I worked with and one of the 6th grade classes had signed up for it. After the first week or so of the challenge, when we saw the national results, we realized there was no way we were ever coming close. Our kids could be on Dreambox 24 hours a day and they would never get the scores that these top classrooms were getting. So within our school, we decided that my class and the 2nd grade class would compete against the 2 6th grade classes of students. So we actually got our numbers up pretty high. We were collecting our results and comparing. The 6th grade teacher would show her students, we'd show ours. And at the end of it, with the growth that they made, we did a little STEM challenge and had the 6th graders and the 1st and 2nd graders work together. So just another way to really get them excited about what they're doing. All right, so this is our last discussion point. Thinking about your existing online programs, could be the one you shared earlier, maybe some different ones. What is one way you see yourself changing the way in which you use the data? Or thinking about alternative ways to look at your data. I really like that. Because they're using it all day. I'm gonna walk by now and be like, oh my god, it's Jeopardy again. It's great. Try this one. It didn't work out so well for my kids still laugh when I give another one I was listening to yesterday. It might have been last night. I was like, I'm gonna have to run the other one now because she might know. We have Envisions as a resource, so we don't necessarily subscribe to it as a program, but we use it more as a resource, and we can pull from other places as we see fit. Would anyone like to share about what they were thinking about as far as changing the way that they're using their data, or different ways to look at data? But if you have any questions, please feel free to fire away, or you can copy our emails down and reach out to us at any time.
I'm sorry, I missed this at the beginning. You said you were piloting Lexia?
We piloted it last spring, so
And
this
did
is
your
our,
entire school adopt it
yes,
based on
so
your
now we're
results?
using it K through 5, plus some intervention for 6th graders. Any other questions? We're ending a little early, so I'm happy to go on and show anybody more specifics about any of the programs or what we do. I think I'm